イリネル・ドボス神父様、コンベンツアル会の神父様で、今、亀有カトリック教会の、主任司祭でございます。イリネル神父様は、コンベンツアル会のフランシスコ会修道会に属する修道者であり、東京の亀有カトリック教会主任司祭を務めております。ルーマニア出身の神父様は、日本において数年にわたり奉職され、異文化間伝道、カテキズム教育、霊的伴走に尽力されてきました。複数の言語に堪能で、日本人、フィリピン人、ベトナム人、ヨーロッパ人信徒から国際的なカトリック共同体への牧会活動を行っております。フランシスコ会の霊性に深く根ざしたイリネル神父様の使命は、奉仕、対話、美を通して神の謙遜さと慈愛を明らかにすることに焦点を当てています。封建生活、兄弟愛、希望、聖マキシミリアン・コルベの霊性といったテーマで、頻繁に黙想会や講演会を主催されています。この私牧的なアプローチは、簡素化と神学的な深みを兼ね備え、人々に人類に仕えるためにひざまずく優しい王としてのキリストとの出会いを促しています。
Father Irinel Dobos is a conventional Franciscan friar and parish priest of Camari Catholic Church in Tokyo. Originally from Romania, he has served for several years in Japan, dedicating his ministry to intercultural evangelization, catechetical formation, and spiritual accompaniment. Fluent in multiple languages, he provides pastoral care to an international Catholic community composed of Japanese, Filipino, Vietnamese, and European faithful. Deeply rooted in Franciscan spirituality, Father Irinel's mission focuses on revealing the humility and tenderness of God through service, dialogue, and beauty. He frequently leads retreats and conferences on themes of consecrated life, fraternity, hope, and the spirituality of St. Maximin Kolbe. His pastoral approach unites simplicity with theological depth, helping others encounter Christ as the gentle King who kneels to serve humanity. So welcome, Father Irinel. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Hello again. Thank you for inviting me. Very happy to join again. Okay, so since we have lack of time, I will try to start already with the title and explain a little bit why I chose this title. The king who is not afraid to kneel. It's not as much about God as about us. Because when God is kneeling in front of the humankind, he's teaching us our value. Usually we kneel in front of the people who are higher ranked than us. And yet, our Creator, our God, is not afraid to kneel in front of the creature. And as idea, usually in the fathers of the church, they individualize two moments when God actually bowed in front of the creation. Is the moment when he created us, and so is the moment when he washed our feet. So that's the topic. The king who is not afraid to kneel. And maybe we can continue the title. Am I afraid to do the same like him? And let's see what it's all about. Are five aspects that I want to talk about. So first image is from Michelangelo, the creation from the Sixtine Chapel. And there is a very fine detail in this image where Adam is in the left side, our father, he's in the right side. That two fingers that are going to touch are the detail. God created us, and him who is doing the first step in meeting the human being. Adam, he just needs to raise up the finger, if you know this detail. So we will going to come back on this image, because when God kneels, it's him who's doing the first step, just to teach us something. So the first aspect of the presentation is the paradox of divine kingship, power revealed through humility. When we hear the word king, many images come to mind: a throne, a crown, a palace, power that is visible, distant, and often untouchable. A king is usually the one who stands above others, who commands, who is served. In almost every culture, reality is surrounded by protocol, security, and a certain holy distance. And then we look at Jesus. He's announced as son of David and king of Jews, but nothing about him fits our usual script for reality. He is born not in a palace, but in a stable. His first throne is a manger. For most of his life, he lives a simple, hidden existence in Nazareth. When he finally enters Jerusalem as king, he chooses not a war horse, but a donkey, fulfilling the prophecy of Zechariah: "See, your king comes to you, humble and riding on a donkey." From the beginning, the gospel confronts us with a paradox. The true king comes in humility. He has all power, and yet refuses to use it for self-promotion. He is Lord of heaven and earth, and yet becomes the carpenter's son, the wandering preacher, and the friend of sinners. The Gospels show us that Jesus consciously resists the temptation to exercise power the way the world expects. In desert, the devil offers him the kingdoms of the world if he will only bow down and worship him. And Jesus refuses. Later, after the multiplication of the loaves, the crowd wants to make him king by force, and he withdraws to the mountain alone. On the night of his arrest, when Peter draws the sword, Jesus stops him. "Put your sword back. Do you think that I cannot appeal to my Father, and he will at once send me more than 12 legions of angels?" He has the power, but yet he refuses to use it in a way that crushes others. When Pilate asks, "Are you the king of Jews?" Jesus answers with another paradox. "My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were on this world, my servants would be fighting." In other words, yes, I am king, but not the kind of king you are used to. His kingdom does not advance by violence, manipulation, or fear. It advances through truth, mercy, and freedom. This is the paradox of divine kingship. Jesus is the King of universe, and yet he accepts to be misunderstood, rejected, and condemned. He is the Lord of history, and yet he allows himself to be judged by a provincial governor. He is the author of life, yet he hands himself over to death. And from a purely human perspective, this looks like weakness, like failure. A king nailed to a cross does not look like a winner. Yet, precisely here, in the apparent defeat, the New Testament sees the highest revelation of God's power. St. Paul says, "The weakness of God is stronger than human strength." What looks like weakness is actually the triumph of love that refuses to retaliate, refuses to hate, refuses to step down from the cross to save itself. So actually I was mistaken. The first two images that the fathers of the church are talking about Jesus of humbling himself is when his incarnation and when he's washing the feet of disciples. The other image of the creation, like humbling himself, it's not a topic that the fathers of the church promoted, but as you could see, it was promoted by Michelangelo. And I think truly that God, when he accepted to create something, he humbled himself. Why would God need creation? He humbled himself to create something. In the beautiful hymn to Christ in Philippians 2, we see the inner logic of this paradox. Paul writes that Jesus, though he was in the form of God, did not regard equality with God as something to be grasped. Rather, he emptied himself, taking the form of a servant. He humbled himself, becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. Therefore, God highly exalted him. The way up in God's logic is the way down. Exaltations passes through humility. Glory passes through the cross. So when we say the king who is not afraid to kneel, we are really describing this divine style of power. The true king is not the one who forces others to bow before him. The true king is the one who is so secure in his identity, so full of love, that he can afford to kneel first. His power is not threatened by humility. It is revealed by it. And this is deeply uncomfortable for us because it exposes how fragile our own idea of power often is. We like to be respected, listened to, taken seriously. We fear that if we admit our weaknesses or kneel before another, we will lose face, lose authority, lose control. But Christ shows us another way. Authentic authority is precisely the capacity to serve. Real strength is the freedom to put oneself last. Before we speak about Jesus kneeling to wash the feet of his disciples, we need to let this paradox sink in. The Almighty God is not afraid to become small. The one before whom every knee will bend one day is the first to bend his own knee before us, in love, not in adoration, so that we might finally dare to kneel before the Father in truth. And the second point of this topic is God who kneels from the incarnation to the washing of the feet. In the paradox of divine kingship, show us who Jesus is. The mystery of the God who kneels show us how far he is willing to go out of love. The first time God bends down is not at the Last Supper. It happens already in the manger or with the creation. The incarnation is the great kneeling of God before humanity. The infinite God crosses an infinite distance to come so close to us that he shares our breath, our hunger, our tears. The father of the church often said that God stopped down to speak our language, to touch our wounds, to look at us from the level of our eyes. Christmas is not cute. It is shocking. The Creator becomes a child who must be held, washed, fed, protected. This is the first gesture of divine humility. The Almighty becomes fragile. And through his public ministry, Jesus continues this movement of descent. He touches the leper, the one everyone else avoids. He sits at table with tax collectors and prostitutes, the ones everyone else condemns. He lets a sinful woman wash his feet with her tears, the one everyone else judges unworthy. He steps on a blind man, cries out. He noticed the woman bent over for 18 years. He allows himself to be interrupted by the pain of the insignificant. God kneels every time he stops in front of a suffering human being. But the most explicit kneeling happens in the upper room. John tells us, Jesus knew that the Father had put all things into his hands. In other words, Jesus is fully conscious of his divine authority. And what does he do with this power? He rose from supper, laid aside his garments, and taking a towel, he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet. It is one of the most shocking sentences in the entire Bible. God began to wash human feet. In Jewish society, this was a task so low that even Jewish slaves were often not required to do it. It was dirty, humiliating work. And Jesus chooses to do exactly this. He does not pretend to kneel, he kneels. He does not symbolically wash their feet, he washes them. He does not stay at the level of theory or metaphor. He touches the mud, the sweat, the dust, the smell. And Peter's reaction is the most honest and the most universal. Never, Lord. You shall never wash my feet. And the question is, why? Because it is almost unbearable to let God to be so close, too intimate, too vulnerable, too humiliating for us. Deep down, Peter is scandalized, not by humility, but by love. Because love, like this, strips us of our defenses. It forces us to admit that we are not self-sufficient, that we need to be washed, that we need grace. Jesus answers, if I do not wash you, you can have no part with me. The meaning is profound. Before we can serve, before we can love, before we can kneel for others, we must first allow God to kneel before us. This moment anticipates both the cross and the Eucharist. when Jesus kneels to wash the feet of his disciples, he is already offering himself. The basin and the towel point toward the water and blood that will flow from his side. The act of bending low prefigures the act of giving his life. And the question is, why does God kneel? He kneels to reveal that love is greater than power, to show that the dignity of the other is worth more than his own comfort, to make visible the invisible tenderness of God, to teach us the shape of divine love so that we can imitate it, to teach us how much we worth. The king who kneels is not weak. He is free. He kneels not because the disciples deserve it, but because love behaves like this. And perhaps the most important lesson here is this. Before discipleship, there is vulnerability. Before the mission, there is intimacy. Before the command, wash one another's feet, there is the invitation, let me wash yours. We cannot kneel for others until we allow God to kneel for us, because only the love that has been received can be offered. And let's go forward with the third point. Let's be honest, the human struggle to kneel is because pride, vulnerability, and grace. When we speak about God kneeling before us, we often imagine that the difficult part is on God's side. That is, it is difficult for him to stoop so low. But in reality, the greatest resistance comes not from God, but from us. The truth is uncomfortable. We have a hard time kneeling. Not only physically, but spiritually. We kneel. To kneel means to surrender the illusion of control. It means to admit our dependence. And for the human heart, especially a modern one, nothing is more threatening than the feeling of vulnerability. Peter gives voice to this inner struggle. Lord, are you going to wash my feet? Never. And what exactly is Peter refusing? Not love. He loves Jesus. Not authority. He respects Jesus. He is refusing intimacy. He's resisting the idea that Jesus wants to enter the place of his shame and dust, the part of him that feels unworthy. The human heart has always preferred a distant God to a close God. A distant God can be admired, feared, respected. A close God has to be allowed inside. Jesus wants to enter in our life, and that's not comfortable. Peter is not unique. He protests. His protest is the protest of every disciple. Lord, you may be king, but not so close. Not down there, not at my feet. Underneath this protest lie three fears that dominate the human soul. First one is the fear of losing control. To kneel means to let go of the idea that I'm self-sufficient. We defend ourselves with schedules, abilities, competencies, reputations. We desperately want to be the ones who serve because serving gives us a sense of superiority. But to be served, to let someone wash your feet, that demands trust. The second fear is the fear of being seen as we are. Our feet are symbolic. They are the part that touches the dirt, the part we hide, the part we don't want God to see. We hide our wounds, our addictions, our insecurities. And when God approaches those places, we instinctively pull back, because love that sees everything is frightening. And the third fear, the fear of depending on grace. We secretly want to earn everything: love, forgiveness, even salvation. A God who kneels destroys the merit system. He cancels the logic of earning. He forces us to accept a love that cannot be bought. And receiving such love feels like too much. It is easier to say, like Peter, "I will never let you wash me." But Jesus responds with gentle authority. "If I do not wash you, you cannot have no part with me." This is not a threat. It is a revelation. We cannot follow Christ unless you first let him love you in your poverty. We like to imagine discipleship as doing things for God. Jesus insists that discipleship begins with letting God do something for us. Before mission comes communion. Before service comes surrender. And every saint has had to pass through this place. The place where the ego dies, where pride collapses, where the soul finally whispers, "Lord, do in me what I cannot do on my own." To kneel is not to be humiliated. It is to become truthful. It is to remember who God is and who we are. And here is the beauty irony. The more we let God wash our feet, the more we feel our dignity restored. Because dignity does not come from standing tall in front of God, but from allowing his love to lift us from the inside. A Christian who refuses to kneel does not become strong. He becomes rigid. A Christian who kneels becomes free. Christ kneels so that we may learn that true greatness is not in being above others, but in being unafraid to be small in the hands of God. And the next point is a Franciscan point of view. I like to promote my own spirituality. The Franciscan vision of humble service as royal dignity. If there is a spiritual tradition that understood the paradox of the kneeling king with prophetic clarity, it is the Franciscan one. From the beginning, Francis of Assisi saw in Christ not a distant monarch, but an humble God who walks among us. And Francis felt called to imitate him, not by wearing a crown, but by embracing the towel and the basin. For Francis, humility was not a survival strategy, but the very heart of the gospel. He called Christ the humble God, and would often say that true greatness can be found only where pride is absent. When Francis stripped himself in the Piazza of Assisi, giving back his clothes to his father, the world thought he had lost everything. But in reality, he had discovered a deeper identity. He had stopped trying to be the son of Pietro di Bernardone and had become to live as a son of the living God. From that moment, Francis understood that poverty is a royal road because it frees the heart to love. Francis could bow before lepers, before beggars, before wounded brothers, because he saw Christ already kneeling there. For him, humility was not simply a moral virtue. It was a way of seeing. To be humble is to stand in truth, to see the world as God sees it, with tenderness, with compassion, with infinite respect. In the Franciscan tradition, authority itself is understood as service. Francis never wanted to rule over anyone. When the brothers became too many and the order required structure, Francis wept, not out of fear, but because he sensed the danger that authority can lose its humility. He urged his brothers, "Let the one who is greater among you be as the one who serves." In a Franciscan fraternity, the guardian is not the one above the others, but the one beneath them, supporting them, carrying their burdens, washing their feet. And this vision reaches its fullest expression in the life of Saint Maximilian Kolbe. In Auschwitz, a place where human dignity was systematically erased, Kolbe revealed a different kind of kingship, the kingship of charity. He did not have anything, no freedom, no possession, no rights. And yet he was the freest man in that place. He shared his food, encouraged the dying, prayed for his persecutors. He lived the gospel in its purest form, the power to give oneself completely. When Kolbe volunteered to take the place of the condemned prisoner, he was not performing a heroic stunt. He was acting out the deepest truth of the Franciscan heart. Love kneels. Not because it must, but because it wants to be close to the one who suffers. In that moment, Kolbe became royal, not according to Auschwitz, but according to heaven. The dignity that the camp tried to destroy was reborn in his act of self-giving. This is the Franciscan message for our world. You become great by becoming small. You lead by serving. You reign by kneeling. The world still believes that prestige, control, and visibility are signs of success. But the Franciscan tradition reminds us that the true king is the one who takes the lowest place. And the brothers and sisters of Francis are never more themselves than when they reflect this humility. In the end, this is what it means to follow the king who kneels, to allow his humility to become our identity. And the fifth point, and the last one, is about living the kingship of Christ today, love that kneels to lift others. After contemplating the paradox of the kneeling king, after watching the God who kneels before his disciples, and after recognizing our own struggle to kneel, we arrive at the most important question. How do we live all this today? How does the humility of Christ become not merely a doctrine, but a beautiful image, but a concrete way of life in our world, our parishes, our families, and within our own hearts? The Christian vocation is not to admire the humility of Christ from altar. It is to allow his humility to reshape our relationships, our choices, our leadership, our priorities. In other words, to let his kneeling become our lifestyle. Living the kingship of Christ today begins with the truth we often forget. Before we kneel for others, we must allow Christ to kneel for us. If you do not let him wash our feet, our wounds, our shame, our fears, then our attempts at service will be fueled by pride, dysfunction, or guilt. We cannot give what we do not first receive. But once we have allowed ourselves to be loved in this vulnerable way, something extraordinary happens. The fear disappears. The ego softens. The heart widens. We rediscover a new freedom, the freedom to serve without calculating, to give without fearing loss, to kneel without feeling humiliated. What does it mean concretely to live the humility of King who kneels? It means choosing compassion over indifference. It means listening before speaking. It means forgiving before being asked. It means slowing down enough to see those whom society overlooks. It means bending over the wounds of another person with reverence, not superiority. It means offering our time, our energy, our very selves, especially when there is nothing to gain in return. The world teaches us that power is the ability to dominate. Christ teaches us that power is the ability to love. In a parish, this humility takes many forms. A priest who knows his people's sufferings. A mother who sacrifices herself for the children. A young person who chooses kindness over popularity, a community that welcomes the stranger with warmth rather than suspicion. Each of these gestures is a way of kneeling. And when the church lives this way, the gospel becomes visible. The church stops being a system and becomes a home. She stops being an institution and becomes a field hospital, a place of encounter, mercy, and healing. And St. Francis understood this deeply. He told his brothers that the only authority worth having is the authority of someone who washes the feet of others. St. Maximilian Kolbe understood it in Auschwitz. The only crown that matters is the crown of charity. And today, more than ever, the world needs witnesses of a different kind of kingship. Not a kingship of pride, but a kingship of love. Not a kingship that stands above others, but one that bends down to lift them up. The kingdom of God begins to grow in every place where a Christian takes the lower seat, speaks gently, forgives sincerely, and kneels with courage. And here is the great promise of the gospel. When we kneel in love, we do not lose our dignity. We reveal it, because we become icons of the one who said, I am among you as one who serves. And if we want to take some conclusions from all that I have said till now, is this. The one who created galaxies is not afraid to kneel before fishermen. The one before whom angels bow bends down to wash dusty, tired human feet. And he does not do this to surprise us, not to shock us, but to teach us who is he and who we are. We do not lose our dignity when we kneel before God. We rediscover it. We do not become small when we serve others. We become free. In a world that measures success by strength, control, and visibility, Christ invites us to another way, a quieter way, a truer way, the way where love kneels, listens, heals, forgives, and lifts up. My friends, the world is waiting for Christians who know how to kneel. Not out of fear, but out of love. Not in humiliation, but in truth. Not because they are weak, but because they have been strengthened by the humility of God Himself. If we let Christ wash our feet, we will find courage to wash the feet of others. And if we let Him kneel before us, we will learn how to kneel before those who need our presence. And wherever love kneels, there is the kingdom begins. May Christ, the humble King, make our hearts like His, gentle, free, courageous, and unafraid to kneel. And just a last quote from our Pope. When the church kneels beside a leper, a malnourished child, or an anonymous dying person, she fulfills her deepest vocation, to love the Lord where he is most disfigured. And that's all, my brothers and sisters. I think I finished my presentation. I'm not sure if I succeed to do it in the right time.
Oh, you did, Father. Perfect. Yes. Oh, yeah. Perfect, Father. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Father. A very, very thought-provoking and a wonderful interpretation of Christ the King that actually is staring us right in the face. And thank you for highlighting and illustrating that so clearly for us. Thank you, Father.
Thank you for inviting me.
ありがとうございます。
こちらこそ。
本当にひざまずくことを恐れない謙遜で勇気のある愛の王ですね。それを意識して私たちもつながってというか従って真似していきたいと思います。ありがとうございます。
So I'd like to invite if there's people to ask any questions if they care to, just raise your hand or show the the hand signal from the Zoom navigation bar or send a message through Q&A button. You're more than welcome to ask a question of Father.
はい、皆様リアクションをしていただければと思います。手を挙げてもいいし、チャットに書いてもいいし、Q&A のところに書いてもいいので、ご質問ありましたらぜひ、リアクションお願いいたします。ハートのリアクションがありました。ありがとうございます。日本人はね、謙遜ですから喋らないけど、ハートを送ります。
Well, if there is no question, I would like to come with something from my side about kneeling or not kneeling. Because in the church, usually we have these two categories of people. People who never bound, for example, when they enter in the church, and people who are doing it too often. Like, it's something crazy to hear these words from the mouth of the priest, to kneel in front of God too often. We should kneel in front of him always.
Yeah.
But there are different ways how we can do it. Like, I will give this example because we all know about the church St. Ignatius, where it's always crowded. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
And the Holy Communion usually takes longer than the homily of the priests. And we are trying to do it as quickly as fast as possible, but we always need more help, right? A way of kneeling in front of Christ is to accept the Holy Communion from others' hands than the priests. Like when they are like people who are distributing the Holy Communion. I noticed moments when there are people who are avoiding and they want to take the Holy Communion from the hands of the priest. Well, that's a little bit sign of pride in my opinion. Because if you really love Christ, you are going to humble yourself and accept the Holy Communion from somebody's hands that you might think is not worthy. And I really encourage people to accept the Holy Communion also from the hands of somebody else. Because the priest did already his job, right? When he accepted God to use his body and to become the priest and become the victim on the altar, the priest already did what he had to do, right? And after that, we need to be able to kneel in front of Christ. And another thing, it's always happening in the big churches, right? There are people, as I said, who doesn't bow, and people who do it even when they're supposed not to do it. So if you kneel in front of the Holy Communion, and by doing that, you block all the other people from receiving the Holy Communion, well, that's not a gesture of kind. You are blocking the people having access to the Holy Communion. If you want to bow, as I said, you need to do it always. Sometimes we need to bow inside of our heart. Like saying, God, Jesus, you you're worth more than I can give you now. I would like to bow in front of you, but because it's so many people, I cannot do it. And that's the biggest way of being humble. As I said, I'm not judging, I'm just saying some ways how we really can kneel in front of Christ. Because just kneeling as a formality, Christ, let's be honest, brothers and sisters, Christ doesn't need us to bow in front of him. It is us who needs to bow in front of him. Because we put in practice what he taught us, first of all. If the Creator is kneeling in front of you, he's giving you value. And the same value, we need to know how to share it with the others. Yeah, so that's all. I'm happy that if there are not more questions, my work is finished.
No, we welcome any questions if anybody
sure.
has. So we'd like, it's always nice to have some questions.
日本語でも大丈夫ですもんね。簡単な質問でしたらね、神父様。
かもしれない。
遠慮して英語だったら言えないという人いるかもしれないので、日本語でちょっと質問したいなっていう方いらっしゃったらどうぞ。
はい、日本語でもいいです。
はい。
It's interesting, Father, that the Feast of Christ the King itself, which is today, comes. We have Advent next, and then of course we have Christmas. But as you mentioned in your presentation, Christ came and had to be taken care of, and he's in his weakest form as a child, as a baby, and had to rely on our Blessed Mother, Saint Joseph, and probably a whole host of other people as a child and growing up. And right before that period of Christ's life, we have him as Christ the King, the end of the year as well. So I suppose it juxtapositions the two personalities of Christ, that of a helpless child when born, and then that of Christ the King. So I suppose it's a rich it's a rich connection, or a rich juxtaposition to help us meditate on Christ's life, and we can see the humility and the vulnerability to also Christ the King. And of course, we are all called to be, priest, king, and
prophets.
Prophets, yeah, priest, king, and prophets. And that's sometimes I think that might be hard for us to as lay people. Well, a priest is a priest, and they go through 7 to 12 years of training, and well, I'm not really a king, and then a prophet. Well,
I will stop you. That's a fake humility.
Yeah.
Because if we really respect the priest because he studied for 12 years, then we should accept what he's saying, what he's teaching us at that moment. If we deny what he's teaching us, then we can bow and we can throw ourselves on the floor as much as we want. We do not respect the priest as the that one who represents Christ himself, right?
Yeah. It's just what I'm trying to say is that we are all called in our own vocations in life to be as Christ in as much as possible in the life that we have, so that people, hopefully through our own action or witness, can be inspired to also wish, if they're not Christian, maybe we could be that way, of that path that helps people find Christ, So everything you say about being humble and having humility probably is that which people find very attractive in Christians, I imagine. Or any, you don't have to be a Christian, but that is a human, to have that ability to have humility. And Christ is, as you mentioned, kneels before us, wash the feet of the people, and I could have, the apostles were probably shocked, as you mentioned, and yet by his example, we learn so much.
Yeah, actually, the sign of being humble is to obey. And let's be honest, Lucifer, he didn't obey God.
Mm.
And it's happening even nowadays. If we are not able to obey, then there is pride.
Mm.
Is self-sufficiency. There are other things to reflect on, to meditate on, being humble.
Mm.
We can talk as much as we want, but if we do not follow the example of Jesus, then we are far away from his teachings, from the ideal of being Christ on this world, being Christians. We like the name of being Christian, but we need to behave like him.
Mm.
And he allowed to be helped when he was baby, and he served even when the disciples said, "Oh, you should not do it." No, I want to do it because I want to teach you how much, how precious you are.
Mm. Yeah. We can imagine that divine majesty becoming human form and a baby in all his weakness. That itself is it's kind of hard. It's still, it can be hard to believe. And I suppose at the time people were expecting Christ to come on a fiery throne with sword and majesty and power, and yet was the complete opposite. And then when we receive Christ through the Holy Eucharist, it's through a piece of bread where he's approachable. Like it wasn't me that said this; it was Father Schultz who mentioned this, that being in a wafer form of bread, that he makes himself very approachable for us, that we're not afraid to enter into the court of the king, as other people might be in the human reality, but actually he's in the innocence of a piece of his presence in the Eucharist and making himself very approachable. It's it's all upside, kind of our way of thinking is turned upside down.
Yes, we forget that sometimes that actually it's God who is doing first step in encountering the man. It's not the man who is searching God and struggling and not finding him. He's approachable. And
Yeah.
to be honest, we have no excuses to say that, oh, I didn't see you. I
So
was there always.
Father, how did God approach you to bring you to this vocation?
Well, I think he did it in many ways, but I was not able to understand all his ways. So it took me a while to understand it. Yeah, it came through examples, through people who inspired me, authentic disciples, and that's the way how God convinced me.
Don't you think, Father, that perhaps all of us, like you just mentioned there are probably many times God does approach us and we don't even know.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, it's what happened with Messiah when he came 2000 years ago. They prayed so much for the coming of Messiah. He arrived, and when he arrived, they didn't notice.
Yeah.
It's the same even nowadays. We pray to Jesus, oh, please teach me, please help me. And he's there, he's giving his answer. But since we are so focused on our projects, we do not see him.
Yeah.
Like the person who is staying at your door, asking for mercy, asking to be helped. And you focused on somebody from the other part of the world. Like we have the members of the family that sometimes it happens that we have so rigid connections between us, and yet we are very merciful for the people far away from us, right? Like it's very good, for example, to think about the war, the people who are suffering in the war, and yet we have so many Japanese in Japan who they have nobody to visit them, or they are hungry or thirsty. And we do not think about them. We think about far away, far away. It's the same what happened 2000 years ago. Jesus was there in their middle, and they were looking far away.
Yeah. It's very true what you're saying.
Yes.
It's the eye doesn't see what's close, but only sees what's far away.
Yeah, that's quite a irony, right? Irony.
Yeah, yeah. We need to learn how to see better.
It's true. The conversion is that when we learn how to see, we learn how to listen, because we think that we know, but no. Conversion is changing even the way how we see, how we listen, how we feel. It's a long journey. I'm still in in the process of conversion. Even my being priest, I'm not perfect. I'm still converting.
You're doing a great job, Father, so far.
I'm not sure. I'm trying.
I think sometimes, Father, maybe to continue the point that when sometimes we're focused or people see or focused on things that are far away and they talk about it and try to take action, some sort of social or political or difficult issue or even charitable issue, it seems kind of maybe easy perhaps it seems easier to talk about that more rather than see close up something which probably would demand for us some action because it's that close. But we don't really want to, let's say, wash the feet, let's say, and talk about something and feel good about talking about something that's in the distance. And maybe everybody else who are even, you know, secular people who are always talking about these things, maybe we feel united with them and yeah, over there. But we conveniently allow us to avoid washing the feet of those close to us, perhaps. Maybe it's a human nature, really.
Yes, indeed. The human nature is quite complicated.
Yeah, yeah. So, Father, any plans for coming up for in your parish church? Congratulations, you're parish priest there now, Camerari Catholic Church, and you must be busy coming up with Christmas and Advent, of course. Advent first, and then Christmas. Yeah.
Yes, we have a lot of preparations. Actually, we are now looking for to start the Advent next week.
Mm.
So we'll have also preparation with recollection. We are looking also to have more opportunities for confession. We are in full preparation. It's a small community, but
Mm.
as I like to say it, very nigiaka, lively.
Yeah, we were talking about that there during our preparations for today's conference about the active community that's there in the church, which is a great gift, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
thank you so much for inviting me. I really enjoyed to be with you all this afternoon.
on the feast of Christ the King, thank you very much, Father. We
ありが
appreciate
とう
it,
ございます。
I
and
was honored.
hopefully we'll see you before the end of the year and have a little chat and talk. So, but thank you again very much, Father. We appreciate it for a wonderful presentation, and we have a gift for evangelization through being able to record your words. So, thank you very much.
Thank you so
あ
much.
りがとう
God
ござ
bless
います。
you. Take care.
Thank you.
Arigato. Bye
良い
bye.
クリ
Thanks,
スマス
Father.
を準備してください。
はい。平和と善。
はい。はじめね。